Let's do some quick introductions. Meet your hosts. My name is Danny. I've been with Brainfish for about 4 months now, working across go-to-market. We've brought on our CEO and co-founder, Daniel Kimber, to walk us through some of the content we've queued up for you today. Daniel, why don't you give us a background on yourself and how we've gotten to where we are today with Brainfish?
Sure. So nice to see everyone. I've been building software, well, probably for almost 20 years now. I started my career in customer service and transitioned into product management, and wanted to really build at the root of the product before sort of impacting a bunch of different customer experiences. And after building out global products from Australia, scaling them to millions of users, we wanted to start Brainfish to really change the way that people understood software. And that's what we've been doing for the last few years. So really excited to now be calling out of San Francisco and to be doing our first ever webinar with Danny.
Awesome. Okay, let's get into it.
Awesome. So today, what we're going to talk about is a couple different things. We want to really focus on the state of AI, and then we're going to talk about how AI is breaking in production. We'll talk about some of the impacts that people are seeing from some of our customers and some of the different things we're seeing across the industry. And then we want to talk about the root cause, whether it's the models, the knowledge, some of the other different things there, the solution, and some outcomes and proof that we've also got as well to sort of talk through today.
Perfect.
Okay, so the current state of AI. So adoption is surging, as everyone's probably aware of. If you haven't used AI by now, you should definitely do it. What we are seeing is that at least almost two-thirds of organizations have adopted Gen AI in their organizations. Almost half of those adopters, however, are experiencing negative consequences. And that might be surprising for some people to hear. I think it's quite an interesting statistic. And what we've been looking into is what are the common consequences that are actually coming out? What are some of the reasons for this? And the number one most reported consequence is inaccuracy. And that's a really interesting friction point here. And what we're sort of seeing is that results in lower reliability, inconsistent outputs, and that inaccuracy really, makes a lot of things struggle.
So, DK, let me ask you a question. We see high adoption, but what are teams actually experiencing that causes them to really pull back on that adoption?
Yeah, so I think as everyone knows, the problem isn't really access to AI. There's some interesting statistics around, I think it's over like 1.4 billion people have used AI in the last 2 years. But it's actually whether you can trust what it produces. And especially at the enterprise, the ability to actually trust that and adopt AI is really critical. And so things like governance and knowledge hygiene and versioning and all sorts of different things get talked about. But inaccuracy isn't really just wrong answers. It's also that sort of erosion of internal confidence. And that sort of brings in a whole new layer of friction.
Sure. Okay.
So what AI fails in production, I think we've all probably seen some interesting behavior across ChatGPT, across Gemini. As consumers, we see it sort of day in and day out now. And if you're not on social media, there's definitely some interesting sort of gotcha moments that people have been seeing. But the result is that you sort of trust it less and you have to try and fill in the gaps yourself. Now, when we talk about what that means in production from a like enterprise perspective, from a business perspective, there's a couple different key things that are affecting it here. So one of them is stale or conflicting knowledge, and that results obviously in inconsistent answers. If you've got conflicts, they result obviously in one answer one day, a different answer the next day. And the next thing that can contribute to that is a no feedback loop or a lack of ownership. And so that results in knowledge drift over time. It results in extreme subject matter expertise in humans, but not in the AI tooling. And you miss product context. So you get all these new versions, new releases. We get different customer configurations with bigger enterprises, and because it's very difficult to actually manage those and maintain those over time. And that results in a bunch of noisy sources. So you've got like all sorts of Teams chats, Slack channels, really difficult to actually ground in what is true and what's accurate. And that means that actually the knowledge underneath is what's breaking here. So the AI models now today are actually really strong. So AI is not a new concept; it's been around for a very long time. But LLMs have sort of matured very quickly in the last few years. And what has become apparent is that the knowledge is that the poor knowledge underneath is really being accelerated by high quality LLMs. And so you're really just sort of scaling poor knowledge.
So if the models are strong and the knowledge underneath is what breaks, what teams are being impacted by this within the organizations typically?
Yeah, it's a great question, and especially from our context. So, what we're sort of seeing across the board is a couple different teams that are getting critically impacted, and there's some obvious ones. Support is probably one of the top, most obvious use cases that we've seen that people have used AI for. Go-to-market is another one. Product, engineering, enablement. So there's a bunch of different things. A lot of them are really commercially charged because the highest value for AI to really offer to your business in the first instance is going to be on the commercial side. And so you've got issues on on support where escalations are increasing, you've got tickets being reworked by humans after AI has tried to resolve them. Go to market, you've got credibility issues where customers aren't really sure whether or not the answer they're actually getting is correct, and that can cause renewal risks as well. And then on the product side, you want to make sure that you're actually getting adoption with these new releases. And it's really critical that if you're building AI tooling for your business, that's actually getting used by customers, because otherwise you're just sort of throwing it out there as a new feature and you're basically just becoming a feature factory to say that you're offering AI.
Yeah, I mean, even on like the go-to-market side, if I'm a marketer or a seller and a customer or prospect is asking me for specific information to move a deal forward, I have to go to product marketing and I'm asking them for assets and they're sending me five different things that have their conflicting pieces. And then I have to go ping multiple people and I have to figure out which one is the correct answer, which one is the correct asset that I should send. And then by that time, it's like days later, I'm getting like multiple different answers. So that's kind of like the issue that I think the go-to-market teams are facing.
Yeah, and like the thing is that none of these teams are using AI wrong. Like they're using it exactly how it's been built to be used. The challenge is that it's operating over essentially misinformation. So there's a disconnect between what your team needs and what's actually there to support the AI.
Yeah.
So in terms of how this can actually impact the business, there's a couple different key things here that this results in. So obviously we've talked about it from like a team perspective and a business outcome perspective, but the challenge with output quality is that it results in incomplete, missing context. You get conflicting signals. You have a lack of a source of truth. Everybody talks about a source of truth or a system of record historically, but that's more and more critical with AI tooling because you need to actually have the right information for AI to actually pull from in order to have that context, that learned information that your subject matter experts will have in the business. And it's really difficult to have that context traditionally. Generally, in most businesses, it takes an average hire like 6 to 9 months to ramp, and then for them to be an expert in the business can take 2 to 5 years. So imagine trying to then train an AI to do that as well as a person. It's not as simple as just giving them access to your docs.
Yeah. I feel like these systems aren't really asking like what's correct. They're asking what's most statistically likely given what I'm seeing. And it's just that's what's causing hallucinations.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, they're prediction models, right? So they're not like omnipotent. They're or omniscient. They're predicting what's going to happen next, and that's always based on the context that they have access to.
Yep.
Yeah, and so like if we think about how orgs actually pass context to AI, so traditionally people will have a documentation layer, and everybody has invested time in documentation layers. You've got help centers, you've got product docs, you've got things like Confluence, you've got structured knowledge articles, FAQs. You might have technical writers, you might have documentation teams. Depending on the size of the organization, you may not even have an owner of some of these types of things, but traditionally, this is the type of knowledge that people are giving to AI. And if you think about how you train a new team member, that's not really how you would train them. Like you would sort of give them the documentation, and that's maybe a good starting point. But it's not really enough to help give that context, and it's only really a part of the picture.
So, all right, let me play devil's advocate here. If an organization has beautiful documentation, it's structured, it's updated, it's thorough, why wouldn't that be enough?
Yeah, it's a good question. Well, like let's say that you do have perfect documentation in an ideal world. If you think about how you train someone, it's not just on what's written. You also it's through like learned experiences, it's through edge cases, it's through things that you maybe don't expect, you can't predict, you can't write down enough. And what it's what we call and what the industry is starting to call the operational context layer. And this is a actually the majority of where a lot of your knowledge lives is through things like videos, through Slack discussions, maybe Teams discussions. You've got things like tribal knowledge from subject matter experts that have been with the business for a very long time, and these are critical pieces of context. And so, if you're bringing on someone as a new hire, what you would traditionally do is actually really get them in front of the best person in the team, and really get them to really spend a lot of time learning from that person and shadowing them, and that's generally the fastest way for them to ramp and to learn and become a high performing individual in their role. You're not going to just go and send them to the docs and say good luck. You really need to actually give them that middle ground. And if you think about from an AI training perspective, it's not just the docs either. You also need to do the same level of effort. And to do that in a short period of time is extremely difficult. It's extremely complicated to find the right information, to be able to distill, like out of Slack conversations, for example, which information is relevant and what's not.
Makes sense.
So what actually is operational context? So operational context is real world expertise. We sort of talked about that a little bit, but the benefit of it is that it's more current than documentation. You will always have more information than something written down. As soon as you write docs, they're generally out of date or they're a static item. It's more nuanced than documentation because it can live across systems. It can be in multiple people's heads. You might have a few individuals in the company that have pieces of this operational context. And in order for you to have a full picture, you actually need to talk to each of them. Like you might need a VP of product, a VP of customer, and you have to get each of them in a room to actually understand the entire life cycle of a customer and sort of how they actually come on board properly, beyond what's written down in a process document. And so that's quite a different sort of structure to how you'd be thinking about training AI.
Yeah, it's almost like the operational context is the judgment, and most AI systems just don't even have access to it.
Yeah, exactly. So I guess the question then becomes like, how do you give AI operational context quickly? And we've been talking about that a little bit, and it's sort of almost a age-old question from a team perspective. How do you ramp your team faster? How do you bring them on board faster? And if you're treating AI like a new employee, that's kind of how you have to think about it. AI agents can work and do like sort of full end-to-end knowledge work, but you need to train them better than your employees because they don't have the sort of common sense or the nuance of what the business does. And you need to sort of fill in those gaps as well, which you may not need to do with a new hire.
Yeah. So, how do you capture something dynamic without slowing the company down?
Yeah, it's a good question. So this is actually a good transition to like what a knowledge layer might do. So what we want to talk about in terms of more of a solution to operational context is what a knowledge layer might do. And so to make this operational layer that we've been talking about usable, which is all of this like ancillary context about what your business does, there's a couple different key things you need to do. You need to capture this knowledge consistently, continuously, like not just have it written down sort of once a month and then like left for the next couple months. And that's going to help you keep it current is by capturing it all the time. Now, the third thing is then eliminating contradictions. And one of the biggest challenges with written information is that if you've got information in Slack, information in calls, information in documentation, all of those things might actually contradict each other. And so being able to actually distill the difference is something that's very difficult for a system to do, but it's something that people can do. And so a knowledge layer is something that can actually figure out what of these different things need to be eliminated and how do we sort of pick that source of truth. And that's going to then help us to structure information for retrieval. And so that means that AI can actually go and look for that information and get the right sort of answer as opposed to just sort of trawling through content and hoping for the best. And the last thing is really being able to activate all of this operational knowledge and context across your teams, your AI agents, your workflows. And in order to do that, you need something that's powerful to distribute to multiple different systems, not just sort of like a SaaS application that you can log into once and then that's sort of it. Because at the end of the day, all businesses use like 20 to 50 different tools on a regular basis. And so you actually need something that can inject that same level of operational knowledge into each of those tools, and rather than each tool having something slightly different. So how would you actually if we take a step back, like how would you actually get a team to build this? So if we take this a little bit more pragmatically, capturing continuously, traditionally what you would do to capture knowledge continuously is you would hire product managers, you would hire engineers, or you'd recruit them from inside the organization. You'd ask them to write release notes, you'd ask them to make some Loom videos, basically just capture like what kind of work are they doing, document it properly. And that's really important as sort of the first principle. And most of the time, most teams will do this, but it's not frequent, and it generally happens when there's a release or when there's something like specific that requires them to actually do that writing. Now, the next thing is then how do you update it? Like, let's say that we've released something, but actually the way that it works is slightly different to what was documented in the first place. Then you might have a technical writer or a support operations team member that's then in the knowledge base or in Confluence or something else, then writing these updates and making those changes. And typically, it's pretty difficult for this person to stay across everything because it's generally a few people in the team.
So, DK, there's a lot of roles involved here, and this is traditionally, right? This is manually, this is not involving the knowledge layer, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, like, this is what you would be doing traditionally if we were trying to build that sort of idea of perfection from a knowledge perspective. And like, we want to build that perfect documentation side. We need to be able to resolve contradictions. We have team members to do that are SMEs. We need to be able to structure it properly. We need to activate it. And typically, you've got team members in the business that can do all these things, but all of these team members have very critical roles that are like actually more positioned towards other different types of functions. And so this is not always a core priority.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, it's like every part of the business is included in this entire process without that knowledge layer, which is a giant process.
Yeah, and like while it might not be immediately a core priority for one person, it is a critical business priority to get this right because it's going to risk a huge amount for new hires, for customers, for a whole bunch of different things. So it's
Right.
really important that you actually get this right.
Yeah. And it's not, and it's just like no one's job, but it affects everybody at one
Absolutely.
point.
Yeah, absolutely. So how would you do this? So one of the things we've been thinking about at Brainfish is how you can actually combine all of these things into a system. And what Brainfish has been building is what we call an intelligent knowledge layer. So it's one platform that is comprised of AI agents that are specific to each of these items on the list. So you have an AI agent that's specifically designed around capturing new knowledge about new product changes. Then you've got one for updates, one for resolving, one for structure. And so each of them is a specialist in actually doing that task and automating what would have been done had you had basically a full-time resource on each of these parts of the experience. And so it's quite a unique concept because you can do it 24/7 and it's a intelligent experience that can learn like your team would and like similar kinds of experiences through vision, through text, through audio, just like if you're onboarding a new team member.
Right. Instead of having to ask humans to manually stitch context together from different teams, different roles, different systems, it's much easier.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So it sort of strengthens as the company operates, and the more changes you make, it actually gets stronger and stronger as opposed to more fractured and more fragmented. So it's sort of like a consolidating force as opposed to something that's sort of just going disparate and changing in multiple different ways.
And it's not just another interface either, right? Like it's the layer underneath. It's the entire knowledge base of your company, all your entire organization.
Yeah, exactly. So it's designed the concept is designed to sit across all of the existing tools that you have. So you might have a knowledge base already internally. You might have one for customers. You might have call recording tooling. You might have Slack. You have all these different tools. This is designed to sit across all of those things and be able to distill that information and then actually improve on it and help you to then filter it back out to ultimately like either the customer, the user, whoever needs those answers.
Yeah, there were so many jobs I wish I had this at, I'm not gonna lie.
So from a benefits perspective, like if we take it back to what we're talking about with teams, if we look back at what those teams are doing now, what this means is that we're sort of de-risking a lot of the roles that we talked about before. So from a commercial perspective, we're reducing blocks and deals. We're helping make it easier to expand customers because consolidating all this information means you're essentially removing risk within the organization. You're removing risk from onboarding, you're removing risk from customer management, and you're making it easier to ship new changes to production because you can train your team faster on them as well. So it's less of a friction point to actually get things out. It's going to help you to iterate as a business, but also help you to deliver on customer promises and also help you to make your team successful as the best possible rep that you might have.
Yeah. So is this just an incremental improvement or is this something like does something fundamentally change?
Yeah, I mean, you can see from all the teams it affects, like it's a pretty fundamental change across the board. This is
Yeah.
even just on a commercial perspective, so really just focused on the outcomes of the business and how do we help to remove risk, but also friction from a customer management perspective, and then how do you help to accelerate innovation through R&D and through getting your product team to actually deliver faster.
And
So
this
yeah.
is essentially improving adoption too, because then we have dependable knowledge that people can actually trust and ingest, and it's delivering instantly too.
Yeah, 100%.
Perfect. So zooming out a little bit.
Yeah, so zooming out a little bit, the future isn't really just smarter models. Like smarter models will come along, and you've got all the big model providers working on those problems, but none of them are actually going to deliver you something predictable, reliable, like that best subject matter expert that you might have in the business. And what we really need is that combination of intelligent models and really rich context, and that's going to give you that operational AI we've been talking about. So what Brainfish has been working on over the past year is our ability to make knowledge consistently accurate and a trusted source for your AI tools to use, which is going to make it really effective for your teams to adopt AI.
Awesome. Well, that was really good stuff. I think, well, let's open it up for questions, but I'll start with one that we hear a lot. If we already have a knowledge base, does this replace that knowledge base?
Look, in principle, it could, but the reality is that your team are pretty ingrained with most of the knowledge tools that they probably have, as well as some of the other platforms, and so we don't want to necessarily have to get them to change their way of working. But what this is going to help is it's going to uplift everyone's productivity across the board because we're going to be actually connecting the dots across all the different teams.
Right. Okay. I think we have a couple more. Let me check the Q&A tab. I see one. Um, is this competing with our current support bot or does it sit underneath it?
Yeah, so it basically sits as an engine that powers that bot. So like let's imagine that you've got an AI bot that you've installed and like that's the end experience. You're happy with that end experience, but you're not confident in the answers it's delivering. This knowledge layer concept is designed to make sure that you can trust and verify those answers before they go out to customers and make sure that they're really rich. Now, if like in a separate conversation, Brainfish can also deliver that end support experience and replace it if you want it. But generally, actually, what we're seeing across the board is that most teams need a knowledge layer to power their AI experiences. And so you've already got that AI support bot. So this would actually be something that helps to power the answers and make them effective.
Right. Okay. Let me see. We have a couple more. We have somebody asking, how secure is this? Are you storing our data anywhere?
Yeah, so it's the same as traditional sort of SaaS-based security. So like for this particular, like for our products, we store all data in AWS. It's like securely hosted. It can be actually hosted in your AWS instance for enterprise if you wanted. So it's all processed in a contained bucket. None of the actual data has been processed by an external model provider. And so it's all actually kept quite secure and similar to how you'd be doing traditional data management with software.
Awesome. We have another one. How does Brainfish capture the correct knowledge, and how does it determine the source of truth of their if there are conflicting documents?
Yeah, so there's a couple things that we do quite uniquely. One of them is that we try and learn the way that humans would. So we can interpret, we can capture knowledge through imagery and video content, as well as unstructured knowledge like Slack threads and all sorts of different things. So that helps us to get access to a lot of information that most people would really struggle to traditionally. And then to actually filter through it, we do a lot of comparisons with using factors like time and relevance, and we have a bunch of scoring mechanisms to then basically bring you a filtered article to review, and then to actually help have a human go through and verify that that information is correct. So at the end of the day, like what we're doing is sort of pre-loading a lot of that work for you, and then helping the teams to basically verify that that information is correct.
Perfect. I think we have one more question. Is our data used to train models?
No. And I think that's one of the great things about this is that if you compare this with like traditional AI model providers, a lot of model providers will be training off your data and what kind of inputs you put into them. The point of a knowledge layer is not to train off your data, it's to help you to consolidate and then build a source of truth. And so training off that data is not really required to actually do a great job. And it's not something that we do either.
Amazing. Well, DK, thank you for your time. Thank you, everybody else, for joining. I appreciate it. This was Brainfish's first ever live session, and we got the chance to hear from Daniel Kimber, our CEO. So I hope everybody had some great insights to take away from it. We'll be sending out this recording, but everybody have a great day. Thank you, Daniel.
Thanks. Thanks, Tim.